Hello there everybody, this is Krista and welcome back to the Krista Chronicles, and today we're starting a new series, a new video series that I am super excited about, that has kind of been just percolating in my brain for a little bit now. And I'm calling this series the Recent Release Test Pilot. And what this series is going to be about, I'm going to touch base with this probably just every once in a while. It might not be a monthly basis, just whenever I feel like there is a good grouping of decks to talk about. But what this is going to be is going into the decks I've brought in the past few months, pulling out the decks that are more recent releases and talking about the ones that I've started working with and just how that's going. Because I was just thinking about how I love doing my, what do I call them now, I just switched the name to New Deck Digest, which is just basically a show and tell of the decks I've gotten over the span of a month. And I love doing those, but I wanted a structured way to kind of come back to you all with, okay, now I've been putting them into use, here's how they're working out for me personally. And I thought the decks I really wanted to focus on are the ones that are newer to the tarot world, newer to the market. So, you know, because I do bring in plenty of decks that have just been around for years and years, and, you know, there's plenty of stuff out in the world on how, you know, people use it, things like that, and, you know, I tend to talk about it regardless in other ways and videos, but I was really excited about this idea to circle back around specifically to new releases with mass market and indie decks that I choose to bring in. Because it's almost like a way to reflect on, like, alright, well, I chose to bring in this brand new deck. What have I done with it? Or how have I started to use it? Because again, this isn't like, some of these decks I've maybe only had for a few weeks now, and it's just this bit of like a preliminary test pilot. So I've put it a bit through the paces and have started to build a relationship with it, and here we are talking about it. So I think that's enough explanation. If anyone's confused, let me know. Sorry. Well, let's get into it. We're going to structure this where, of course, talking about one deck at a time, we're going to do mass market and then indie. And I'm just going to talk to you a little bit about how I've been using the deck, and we're going to flip over for each deck to show some pairings I've been really loving, because I am all about pairing tarot and oracle. I do it with almost every reading I ever do, so every deck I have is going to have something I like to pair it with, so I just thought that'd be fun. Alright, okay, I just went to grab my phone so I could look up when each of these decks was released. I thought that'd be fun. So we're starting with the Cozy Witch Tarot, which was released October 3rd, 2023. I, though, didn't pick this one up until it was later October, maybe early November when I picked this up, but I haven't been able to put this deck down since I brought it in. So this was, when I had this idea, this was the first deck that came to mind, because I really feel like I've put this one through the paces so far. Now, I was hesitant about this one because I am not usually one for decks that are heavily people, and I don't love when they have a bit of a modern lean. That's just not the art style I personally usually like. And I did have the Oracle deck by this same creator. I can't think of what it is, but there's an Oracle deck, and I didn't love it. So I was hesitant about this, but I have been totally just proven wrong about all my thoughts about this deck. It has this really wonderful way of feeling fresh and modern while maintaining this perfect level of whimsy and bringing you into the magical world. And first of all, if you're a cozy lover, you're gonna love this. This makes me think of cozy mysteries, cozy fantasies, anything that just feels magical and makes you feel good. This deck is that. Now, when I did bring it in, I also had this expectation that it would really be a bit of a comfort hug deck, because going through, each of the cards has a key phrase on it, and I thought they leaned a little bit light. And I have to say, every time I make the assumption of this, except for truly like 2 decks I feel like in my collection that I can think of now, I'm always wrong of saying like, oh, it feels like it could just really lean into the like extreme light side of things. That's not what I have found this deck does. I find that this deck actually really, really calls me out. But in this way that, oh gosh, I'm trying to think of how to explain it. It almost feels like it hits in this inner teen, college self kind of place, which I didn't realize was such a hole in my collection. That inner teen, earlier, like very beginning of 20s, is something that, a place for me that I do not reach easily, and I don't feel that I had other decks that reached there before this one. And I love it for that. I don't necessarily go into it saying I'm gonna do inner teen work. That just, it feels like it's the part of me it's speaking to that's been waiting to kind of be given voice. And so for quite a few weeks, I actually brought this with me to work and did a daily pull right when I got to work with this. But I found myself reaching for it all the time. It's really, really good for getting a quick, straightforward message, because while it does have a guidebook, I can't say I've used it. I don't even know that I've cracked into it, because the phrases just feel like everything I need and more. And so I've really been loving this for just when I want a single card to tell me how it is. It's perfect for situations like when I'm at work and I can't be doing this full spread, you know, getting a quick card is perfect for that. I just find myself, it's one of those decks that I just am walking around with. I always want it with me. So that's really how this one has kind of slotted into my collection. I bring it like to the couch while I'm watching TV or playing video games. I bring it to work. And it's just, something about it is really comforting, but in a way where I know the truth is getting told to me, which to me is something that brings me comfort, because I like facts. I like things to be a little bit black and white, because that's kind of how my brain works most of the time, and so being told how it is what I want, and I think this does such a masterful job of it. So really just been loving this one. Let's get into what I've been pairing it with. Okay, for the Cozy Witch Tarot, I've got 2 pairings here that I've really been enjoying using it with, and this is, if I'm not doing a single card draw, which is my main way of using this deck, this is what I like to do. Now, mainly I like using this as an oracle, because I really like the key phrases at the bottom. So the tarot I've been loving pairing with it in this way is the Teddy Bear Tarot. This just brings that cozy, comforting energy that this deck kind of promises, and I think really delivers on well. But how, oh my gosh, how good is this? The Teddy Bear Tarot is another one I really like to go to in those times where, like, I kind of want the delivery to be a bit nicer and softer visually, but I still want to hear whatever it is I need to hear. I think this pairing really, really does that fantastically. Oh my gosh, I could just look at these together all day. I think they give this perfect kind of softness and a hug in the best kind of way, where that hug you get when, like, someone older and wiser than you just kind of bluntly is like, yeah, here's what you're doing wrong. but then, you know, they end it with like a hug and like, but it's gonna be fine. That's what this pairing feels like to me. Oh, and I just love it. Isn't it so good? I could look at this all day. Oh my gosh. Okay, but that is my favorite pairing when I'm using this as an oracle. But every once in a while, I do like to use it as its intention as a tarot. And so, in those moments, the oracle deck I have found I really, really like putting with it is the Cottage Witch Oracle. I know, lame. Picking my own creation, but I just think, I don't know, I just think they're a really good pair. Let's get out. I've got all of the cards in here, and they're just kind of split into my working deck, and I should really just kind of find a space to keep the cards I'm not using at the moment, but I think what I like is the Cottage Witch maintains the like witchy feel of it, and my aim for Cottage Witch really was to be a bit cozy. And I think what I like also, I mean, visually I think they just work, right? But when I'm going to the Cozy Witch, I want the reading to be a bit easier in the sense of everything's right here. I don't really have to get into the guidebook, and I think the Cottage Witch really can work in a similar way. I mean, of course it works that way for me because, you know, there is a full guidebook, but I am the writer, so I know my ideas behind this, but I think even so, from what I've heard from other people's use, is that a lot of people do just use the keyword. So I think these really go together well in that way too, where it's kind of like you can pull it and go, you know what I mean? I just think the energy of them goes really nicely together. So those are my pairings for the Cozy Witch Tarot. Our next deck we have to talk about is the Witch Sister Tarot. Now this, I feel like, has been just blowing up all over the place, and rightfully so. Now this came out, this is by Julia Jeffrey, and came out by Llewellyn. I didn't say the publisher on this one, and now I don't remember, so sorry. I'll put it down below. Okay. But this came out from Llewellyn. This was out December of this year, but I was lucky enough to receive a review copy of this deck, so I was able to start working with it back in early mid-November, which still was a huge, huge pinch me moment from last year. But anyway, this has been getting just a lot of talk around Instagram and TarotTube, and for very, very good reason. This is another one where since I've gotten it, I haven't been able to put it down. I find myself thinking about it when I'm not using it. Now, where this deck has slotted for me is it is a Celtic mythology deck. So if you are someone like me who likes to work with Celtic energy, Celtic deities, things of that sort, this is one I think you would really like, because that, again, is an energy that feels connected to how I experience the spiritual world, you could say, in the day-to-day. It's what comes naturally to me. It feels like it hits the closest to home out of any other, like, mythology, pantheon, culture, whatever you want to say. For me, it's just been Celtic and that earthy nature green practice. And so I've been using this deck mostly as a daily morning draw. So I have a morning tarot pull practice that I do like a full reading in the morning. It's just something that grounds me and makes me feel connected to the thing I love before I start my day. And I have been loving using this deck for that, because it feels like this instant dose of like, how do I say that? Like, spirituality in the morning. And I've been really liking it this time of year because it's one that I am usually a guidebook person, which I know I said for the last deck I've not even really cracked open the guidebook, which is very, 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 very strange for me. Otherwise, I love getting into the guidebook, especially when I'm reading for myself. But if you are not usually a guidebook person, for the Witch Sister, it is entirely worth it. It's entirely worth the time to read the entry because it really does veer from the usual tarot system. Not in an extreme way where you can't use it as like an RWS, but it really is its own unique thing. And I think, oh my gosh, The Truth and Story. How could I be blanking on her name? What the heck is... That's like a crime. Is that not a crime? I think it is. Like, so big on tarot. I'm just bad with, names. Anyway, Kelly. It just came to me from The Truth and Story. Described this in a video I watched yesterday, and just the best way ever, where it just masterfully blurs the line between tarot and oracle, where it is a tarot deck and you can just use it like a tarot, but it's also this thing of you could pull one card and get into the guidebook and almost really use it like an oracle if you wanted to, because there's so much there. And so I'm really liking it this time of year where, you know, it's winter time, we're slowing down, we're staying inside, and so I'm really liking using decks where there's got a guidebook that I'm excited to get into. And this really, really falls into that category for me, and I find that I learn new things every time I use it. I've just been obsessed. I've been really obsessed with this one. And loving how it's been working for me, because I am a fan of tarots that do their own thing. So that is kind of my biggest takeaway with this deck, is that it's a tarot that really does its own thing, goes its own direction. The guidebook's amazing and it's really worthwhile. So let's look at some pairings, because I got some good ones for this one. Okay, so I also have two pairings here to show you for the Witch Sister Tarot. Now, of course, since this is very much a Celtic themed deck, I really leaned into that, and usually lean into that with the oracles I pair with it. That's just the thing I like to do. So starting with this lovely pairing, this is the Druid Plant Oracle. Mine is trimmed, so there's usually like a secondary border around it, but I took that off, and I just think this oracle is, the art is by Will Worthington, which is the same as the Wildwood Tarot. And same with the Wildwood Tarot, there really is this very heavy Celtic lean that I just think works so well with this tarot. And it feels, whenever I'm using this tarot, because there is this witchy Celtic theming to it, it just feels like it really wants to be paired with something that leans into that earthy, witchy practice. So to me, that's things like plants and herbs and animal allies. So I also do have the Druid Animal Oracle, and I think that pairs really well also, but this is just the one I've been really liking lately, and I think they go super well together. I love the readings I get from them. I love how the art looks together. Beautiful. Just beautiful. So, that is the Druid Plant Oracle. And the other oracle that probably I've been liking the most, I think every time I pull out Witch Sister, I pull out this oracle, because I just think they work so well together. This is the Wisdom of the Kaliak Oracle. Now this one is, it kind of goes in and out of print basically. the way to get it is to follow Jane Bridson, that's the creator's Facebook page, to get updates on when she's doing an order for the deck. But, and this also has a white border that usually I cut off. But yeah, I mean, we've got this oracle all themed around the Kaliak, perfect for this time of year. And also, you know, a Celtic goddess. Look at how cute. So of course, thematically, it works perfectly with this deck that brings in a lot of other Celtic mythology, but I also just think visually it's really beautiful. Look at that. It's just that real green, earthy spirituality it brings in that I really like how they go together, and I like how they read together. This has been such a go-to for me for the last few weeks. I just always want to be using both of these decks and using these decks together. So I think this for sure has been my favorite pairing for the Witch Sister. Okay, now we're moving into the mass market oracles, and I've got two to share with you today. The first being the Seasons of the Witch Imbolc Oracle. This came out from Rockpool in November in the US. So, I mean, I feel like I don't have to talk about this one too much because it's such a known and loved series for so many good reasons. But this is the second Seasons of the Witch that has come out with the new artist, which I am such a huge fan of. I think it really brings this deck to such a, almost like a cozy folk art place that for my personal practice, it just really fits in well. I do love the old art, and I think in a way, the 3 decks we got with the last artist, thinking about the holidays they're attached to, it almost, like, that art style makes sense to me. It's a little bit sharper, a little bit more spooky, and for Samhain and Yule especially, I think that makes a lot of sense. But I think they flow together well, but regardless, I have been loving this oracle. It's really falling in line for me, like how much I loved the Mabon, and I love how wintry this deck is. I love the key phrases on the bottom. I think it brings up a lot of interesting emotions that come with the season. Like, there's a lot to do with grief and rage and those kind of more, I don't know if I want to call them shadowy emotions, but you know what I mean. Which I think is so perfect, but then also these really, like, comforting things and practices, and I just think it's really, really perfect to the season, and I've just really been enjoying that. I find myself, of all the decks so far, it feels like my world really fits in with what's going on here right now. Yeah, see, look at this. Keening. How good is that card? And so this is one, just like the other Seasons of the Witches, it often comes into that daily morning reading for me. That's how they tend to work. That's how they tend to work for me. I just throw them into my seasonal rotation, and I tend to use them all the time. All the time. It's so funny when I post those morning readings on Instagram every day. If you're curious, I have my Instagram linked down below. But every time I go to tag photos, my top suggestions are the 2 creators, the artist, and Rockpool on there, because I'm always using this deck and always tagging those 4 accounts. So really, again, we don't have to dwell on this one because we all know Seasons of the Witch. Most of us love it. So let's go into some pairings because I've been having a lot of fun with this one. Okay, I've got 2 tarots to show here that I've been liking with the Seasons of the Witch Imbolc Oracle. Now, let's start with one that, it felt like the obvious pairing to me because we've got a winter-themed oracle. This feels like my winter snow day deck, and that's the Intuitive Night Goddess Tarot. And also, I kind of like how we've got the Seasons of the Witch, and not fully, I guess I shouldn't say fully, but a lot of the deck does take this kind of feminine lean. And of course we've got the Intuitive Night Goddess, which does as well. So they do match up in that way. I do think, though, in the latest of this series, we've been seeing some more at least kind of androgynous figures, which I think is nice, but regardless, I think these go so beautifully together, don't they? It just looks like a cold, snowy day on my reading table, which is exactly the energy I want because I personally really like the snow. I think it's the best, and I'm hoping we get more of it because I had like one day so far and I want more. But yeah, anytime it's, oh my gosh, I feel like a kid on Christmas. I wake up and I'm like, oh my gosh, I gotta get my snow decks out, and these are the two. So you'll know when it snows at my house because I'm gonna be using these decks. But I think they go so nice together, don't they? I love how they read with each other. So that is the Intuitive Night Goddess Tarot. And let me get this back in this box so I don't make a mess. Okay. And another deck that I've had a goal of using more this year that really has paired so nicely with this oracle is the Witch Folk Tarot. Now this is another wintry feeling deck to me, but I think it's more so like set at nighttime, but we've got these grays and blues going on that make it feel wintry to me. But oh, even like look at them together. I mean, that is just a vibe, right? They both have this beautiful, cool toned, like real pagan feeling witchiness that I love so much. I think like on paper, I think I possibly like this pairing even more. The Intuitive Night Goddess pairing is just, it's kind of clouded by the fact that I relate it to snow. But I think these work so beautifully together. Wow. I haven't like pulled both of them out like this, like without just doing a reading. So I'm kind of admiring it in this way for the first time along with you all. And like, how good is this? Yes, Slay Queen. Okay, so that is the other pairing I really like with the Seasons of the Witch Imbolc, and that is the Witch Folk Tarot. Okay, the last mass market deck I have for today is the Green Witches Oracle deck by Erin Murphy Hiscock and illustrated by Sarah Richard, who is the same artist who did the, that Mushroom Tarot deck, Midnight Magic Tarot. So beautiful artwork right off the bat. Now this is the latest to have come out. This came out mid-December, and this one, I picked this up right away because especially based on what I've been talking about so far this video, of course I wanted this one. And I think it's really, really a good, solid deck. Now, we have all of these, basically things related to green witchery. So we've got herbs, we've got crystals, animals, plants. Really a lovely collection of things. Now, what I have been liking the most about this deck is that we get the title and 3 keywords at the bottom. I just think it's really nice when decks do that. I really tend to enjoy it a lot. I think it's a cool way to, I think Dawn Michelle does this where she then uses the 3 keywords as a spread almost, which I think is really neat. I just think it opens up the card a lot, and I appreciate that. Now, what I will say is, and I think it could just be because I tend to really like decks of this flavor, so I tend to have a lot of these. I don't personally feel like there's anything this deck does that's like groundbreaking or kind of makes me go like, wow, like that is so different, unique. And I don't mean that, I'm not saying that in some big negative way. I don't think everything put out into this world needs to be groundbreaking by any means. And I think it's beautifully done and thoughtfully done. But I guess just, you know, my point, of course, in these test pilots is to be honest about my use of the deck and my experience with the deck, and that's just something I feel like I kind of have in my head and wanted to note about it, is that if this kind of green witchy aesthetic and world really appeals to you or is part of your practice, I think you're really gonna like it. But I don't think, and I didn't go into it thinking this either. I didn't find that with the other decks I have of this theme that it does anything super different. So I guess to say that if you are someone who doesn't, I don't know, what am I trying to say? If that's something that you are looking for, then it might not be for you, but if you're looking for something that has that green cottage witchery feel, is at this mass market price, which is really good. This is from Adams Media, and it was really affordable, and really just does the job and does it well. It's a really solid deck. So, that being said, let's look at some pairings. Alright, so next let's take a look at the Green Witch's Oracle deck. Now, I'm just going to show one pairing here today because I just really think this is one of those universal oracles that goes well with most things, and that is another one of the reasons I was drawn to get it, was it's just one of those that feels like it's going to go with anything. So I wanted to show my favorite from my current capsule collection for January that I've been pairing with this, and that is the Rain Shadow Tarot. I don't know, just something about these decks together I just like. But again, I've kind of been pairing the Green Witch with a lot, and I've yet to find something where I'm like, no, that doesn't work. So that is definitely, if you're someone who likes pairing decks, that's a huge bonus because it goes well with a lot. But I think color-wise, these two really go nicely together because you can see that there's this border here on each of the cards that is filled in with green and pink for the flowers, but a lot of it is this kind of charcoal colored sketchwork that I think goes really nicely with the border colors on the Rain Shadow Tarot. And with the Rain Shadow, we do have that kind of earthy look, feel, theme. So it really fits in that way as well. And I don't know, I think they just visually really work well. I love how they read together too, because this tarot is a bit more straightforward. So it's one of those things where, like, you can think as hard as you want to, you know what I mean? Because I do think this oracle offers some really interesting keywords, and this tarot, I do like getting into the guidebook, because there are some things where it's like, oh, that's not a way I would have thought of that before. But if you kind of just wanted to take it at face value, you could. So I think, oh, it's my favorite card in this deck. I just think they go nicely together. Right? I think they work. So, that's been my pairing I've been using with the Green Witch's Oracle. Alright, now we are moving on to the indie decks, and I have 3 here to show you today, and we're gonna flip I've got 1 oracle and 2 tarots, and it just so happens that the oracle came out first, or at least arrived to me first, so this is how we're gonna do it. So we're starting out with the Sacred Threads Oracle by our very own Dawn Michelle. She released these to the public on Make Playing Cards, I want to say in October? Yes, because I brought this on my trip with Andy, which was like early-ish November, so I want to say October. And I have the pocket size of this, and I do also have the guidebook you can buy separately on Amazon. Now, this oracle immediately stole the show for me, especially when it comes to using it as a supplementary deck. Now, I made a video on my concept and definition around supplementary deck that you can check out in my videos. And all that to say that my purpose of supplementary deck and use of supplementary deck is in by no means throwing any shade anywhere. Like, it's not at all a negative thing. It's actually a category of deck that I probably use the most in my collection, because this is an oracle it lives on my reading desk, because a lot of times, especially when I'm doing those morning polls, I'll have 1 or 2 oracles and it'll feel like something is missing, or that something isn't connecting with the messages of the cards I have. And that's where a deck like this really shines for me. And this deck in particular has really, really just stolen the show in this category. Is it just brings this instant connection, it ties it together, it provides that light bulb moment. Because as you can see, we have these beautiful, beautiful nature drawings here, and these really good keywords, and that's pretty much what you get, which is exactly perfect for that use, and also why I chose to get the pocket size. However, I do think I'm gonna get the big size too, because I've been loving this one so much, and I do really enjoy the written guidebook. And the written guidebook is another reason I want the big one, because Dawn Michelle gives these really cool journal prompts to go with each of these cards that I think this is just my brain, where to me, if it's small and pocket size, it goes into that supplementary category, because I'm always going to want to pull it next to like a normal sized card, unless I'm like traveling or something. And I really think if I have the larger size of this deck, that it's gonna have this completely different feel, completely different purpose, where I could see myself pulling one of those cards and really focusing in on those journal questions that she gives us in the guidebook. But regardless, I probably use this deck at least 3 times a week. For just the morning readings. I'll pull it out a lot otherwise too. It just really gets that job done and is my favorite for it. There's so many other ones that I have that really were staples, like I'm never gonna remember the name, but that one that's like drawn on the wooden background that doesn't come with a guidebook, it just has the keywords. That was really my staple for a long time, but this has taken over that, and I'm really excited to get a full size and just kind of compare that. But if you are someone who likes using the decks in that way to like clarify and tie things together, the pocket size of this is awesome for that, and I can't recommend enough, and I've just really been loving it. It's one of those decks that right when I used it the first time, it like made itself at home and just was like, here's how you're using me, this is what I'm good for, so give me this little spot on your desk, thanks so much. Like, that's just the energy it had, and I love it for that. So, really great experience with this one. Let's look at some pairings because this is a really, really interesting one. Okay, let's take a look at my pairings for the Sacred Threads Oracle. Now this, oh my gosh, it just, I mean, the name alone, Sacred Threads, that really is the energy of this deck. It really has such a true spiritual, sacred energy to it. And that, you can really tell by the two pairings I'm liking the most with it, that that's where it leans. So, to begin, the tarot I really like pairing with this one is the Ritual Tarot. Now, this is the new marked edition, which I totally could have included in this video, but I feel like, I don't know, I haven't really, I've used this one a few times, but not enough where I felt like I had solid thoughts on it, other than I am really liking it. Regardless, that's not the point. Look how nice these are together. I just think the Sacred Threads provides such a nice groundedness to a tarot that to me feels a little bit up in the ether, which tends to be how collage decks make me feel, because there's a lot going on, a lot to examine, a lot of symbolism, and so it doesn't really have a grounded feeling to me. But I think this deck, because it's something that every image is something I recognize, the keyword makes sense, yet it still has this really kind of powerful spiritual feel to it, I think really helps to ground decks that feel like a little bit up there and like this big, really big energy to me. And I think it's more so coming from a place of like understanding it versus not immediately understanding it, you know? And with the Ritual Tarot, I fall in the category of I don't immediately understand what's going on. So look at that. Oh my gosh. Like, just look at them visually too. It's so beautiful. So beautiful. So I really like those two together. That is the Ritual Tarot. And, oh, perfect one to switch over on. Where did I just put the box? Okay. Because the other deck I really like pairing with this is the Mysteries of the Black Madonna Tarot. This, like, from the get-go, has been my favorite. The Ritual Tarot, like I said, is a bit newer to me. So that's kind of a pairing I've been liking lately, but this from the start has been like the pairing. Let's bring that down a little bit. I mean, how good is that? Again, it's taking this kind of big... Okay, my camera overheated because the sun's very intense right now, oddly enough. Anyway, what was I saying? Darn, I forgot. But these are just, this is probably what I was saying. These are just a beautiful, I know, okay, I remember. So, the Sacred Threads Oracle feels like it takes a kind of, the big mysterious energy of the figure of Mary, all she can encompass, and all that this deck kind of almost not allows her to encompass, but showcases her as, and brings it down to like just a really solid theme for me to consider. And that's what I really like about it. And I just, again, also think they visually pair so well. Look at that. Oh, it's so good. It's so good. So these are the two decks I've just been really loving the most with the Sacred Threads Oracle. Okay, now we've got our two tarots, starting with the Bohemian Gothic Tarot. Now this one I received very early, like the first week of November, I want to say, and it was instant love for me, which I was so excited about because if you've seen some of my videos where I've talked about the other Baba Studios decks I have, that hasn't really totally been my experience with them. There's some sort of like block for me with using them, and I'm not sure what it is. But whatever it is, this deck doesn't have that, which is so interesting to me. This one felt so usable, and just right off the bat, I just am always drawn to using this deck. I think it has this really, really awesome kind of dark Victorian dark academia almost feel to it that I'm obsessed with, and I think that's definitely part of it. Is since I was a little kid, especially like books in the Victorian era with that kind of dark academia feel, cannot get enough. And so this really slots in there for me, so of course I just really love it. And I think the guidebook on this one is awesome. I did get the guidebook with it, the full-size one. I think it's totally worth it. And yeah, I think this is one where, oh, I feel like I had a philosophical line in my head that I don't know if it makes any sense, but it almost, like, oh my god, this is such a silly thing to say, but it almost feels like within this deck, it has this way of examining like the human condition almost. I know, eye roll, it's okay. You can roll your eyes, I just did. But really, it's like when I'm reading the guidebook, it's talking about these scenarios of these characters, and it just feels so real, and like I can automatically think of a way that even if I'm not relating to the situation, I'm relating to the feeling that they must have. It's like something I can instantly clock of like, ooh, I bet that's how that feels. And that's something I really, really like about it. Now, I will say this one did have like a real love affair moment where for probably like a month after I had it, I was using it all the time. I brought it on that trip with Andy, and we used it like for every reading. And I haven't picked this one up in quite some time. But for that bit, I did really love it. And so I'm curious to see if it's something that I go back to soon. I think probably for February I'll do the Victorian Romantic, because like obviously, but yeah, I think it's just a really, really beautiful, usable, and just, I don't know, it feels like there's so much story in this deck. And so I think the reason I haven't gone back to it is because with all that story in there, it feels like, to me, it fits into my practice, not actually as that morning pull kind of way, but when I am doing readings around like specific situations and like relating to people. I do a lot of readings about like how I relate to others, because it's something that, you know, I realize I relate to others differently, or I often become confused by things in that realm, and that's where it feels like it kind of sits, like the readings I do other than that morning pull. So yes, let's get some pairings. Okay, so I really just have one pairing to show for the Bohemian Gothic, because this just was by far my favorite, and it's one of those where I just kind of want to use it every time when I'm pulling out this deck, and that is the Memento Mori Oracle, which I keep. Usually it lives on my altar in this very dirty right now glass box, but I like that. Let's just pull out a chunk, because that is a big deck. But I just think, I mean, right, do I even need to explain myself here? So good. It's so good. Because they both have a bit of this, like, that, like I was saying, dark academia, spooky Victorian feel. Like, these two together, it makes me feel like I'm in an old Victorian era graveyard. And I love that about it. I think they just go so well. I really like to, since I'm loving the guidebook on this tarot so much, I like pulling multiple tarot cards and then making the reading a bit more expansive with one of these cards, which there are guide pamphlets. I don't tend to use them. I kind of just like pulling a card and seeing what the object brings up for me personally. And so I think they go really, really well together. So good. So good. So that, by far, is my favorite pairing with the Bohemian Gothic, and that is the Memento Mori Oracle. Last but not least, I have the Age of Witchery Tarot by Roger J. Horne to talk about with you all. Oh my gosh. I swear this this video series is not meant to be like a huge gushing love fest. It just worked out this time that the decks I've really kind of put into use, I've really, really loved. And so, you know, just to say, it's not meant to be like talking about my favorites, because I'm realizing now that it might be how it seemed. It really is meant to be like, I've tested this out, this newer deck, here's what I think, in case you've gotten it and haven't, like, you're not sure how you might want to use it, or you haven't gotten it but it's on your list and you don't know if you want to get it, you know, that's kind of the purpose. It just happened that for this first round I really love these decks. So, I love this one. It is a pip style deck with all of these just amazing woodcut, just witchy images. It just, oh my gosh. I love it so much. It is a bit more straightforward. I mean, it's a pip style deck, so I don't find I really go to these kinds of decks when I'm looking for tons of depth within the card itself, if that makes sense. And again, not as any sort of hit to that, I just think, to me, that's how pip decks and like Marseille style decks function. I'm not obviously going to it for the imagery, so it's a bit more straightforward. It's a bit more, here's how it is. I love all the little like demon figures in it. What I love using this deck with, though, is the book, also by Roger J. Horne, Cartomancy. I have this image because I was looking at their Instagram to find out when this came out. I didn't even say that. This came out technically in September, but it's from Game Crafter, I believe, so I didn't actually have it in my hands until October because it could just take a bit. But I love using this deck with this book. There is a PDF guidebook on Roger J. Horne's website to use with this, but I really like this deck and book combo the best. And so if you are someone who likes witchy things, likes using pip decks, I mean, I don't think you can go wrong with this. I think it gives really awesome readings in that usual pip style way of like, it's straightforward, here's what it is. There's not too much, at least this is how I experience it, there's not that much questioning around it. We're not looking at the imagery to be like, you know, I mean, you can, not to say you can't do that, but that's not how I usually use it. So I really like using this deck. I do use it sometimes in morning pulls if I just feel like I want a bit more of this like straightforward, we're not really digging into it kind of energy. I have used this when on the occasion I do kind of spell work, ritual type work. I like using this deck if I'm doing readings around that. Or it just in the rare case where it's like, I'm confused about something, I want some insight, and I'm just pulling, I need just like a quick tarot reading. I like this for that too. It feels like this has kind of been my go-to pip style deck as of late, and I really love it. It's kind of, to me, this, not to say that there isn't like depth to these images, but or like the choices made by Roger J. Horne, because I am such a huge fan of his. I love his books. I just love everything he does, so I bought this so immediately. But for me, this is a bit more of an aesthetic purchase. And so, well, I really love it and have had a really good experience with it. I do think if it's kind of like you are questioning getting it, I do think it does a very similar job to some other pip style decks I have. The one that comes to mind is like Antique Anatomy. I think they could kind of fill a similar slot if that's one you already have and love, but certainly not a purchase I regret. And actually, this is kind of like taken a bit of the slot of Antique Anatomy for me. I still have that deck, of course, still love it, but I find myself reaching for this one just because something about the aesthetic and feel of it, I just feels really extra witchy in the way I like. So let's get pairings. Why not? Now, I also just have one pairing to show for the Age of Witchery Tarot. One, because I just think this pairing works so well, but also this is another thing of, I think this tarot really pairs with a lot. Because, it is that pip style, it's a bit more simplistic, it's easier to pair in a wider range, and so, especially since I am one to love this kind of warm color tone, I really find that it matches with most things I want to use. But my favorite pairing I have found so far is the Brian Froud Fairies Oracle. Something about the two of these just energetically together, I think there's just a mischievous energy that I really like. I don't know what it is, but I kind of felt that way about the tarot from the get-go, that it had this almost just mischievous energy. I don't know how else to really say that, but it made me want to immediately pair it with the Fairies Oracle, because that is totally what I get from this deck as well, and I think they work so well. And what I really love about it too is that pulling one of the fairies cards, you really do get so much to think about just on its own. There's a lot to get into with the guidebook, and so having a pip deck alongside it feels a bit, I don't know, more approachable. I think it just doesn't feel like too much. It's not overpowering, but it directs the conversation in a really, really nice way. And it just, I don't know how else to explain it other than it feels like whenever I use these decks together, it's like I can almost like feel them, I don't know, like giggling with each other, like in a mischievous way. That's just, just what I feel like is going on with these two decks. I really, really like them together. So, that's my favorite pairing right now with the Age of Witchery Tarot, and that is the Fairies Oracle. Okay, everybody, that is what I have for you today. I'd love to hear your thoughts on this new series I'm doing, but I had so much fun making this video. I hope you had fun watching it, and I'm already excited. My purpose in this is also to, I don't want to say bring some purpose, but to get me really excited about kind of looking at the new decks I've brought in, the new releases I bring in a bit more of a structured way. So now I'm already thinking of like, okay, what new releases from like even the past week or two have I brought in that maybe I could spend some time with for the next one? And I don't know, it's getting my brain excited, which is always fun. So yeah, let me know what you think. Let me know what you think of these new releases, if you've tried them, if you were thinking of getting them. What are your thoughts? But other than that, I'll see you all again very soon.